Welcome to the Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom, a podcast by the Lavish Group. We are a community of powerful leaders and creators. Each one of us is on a different path and from a different background, but we all embody aspects of what it means to truly live a lavish life. And we are here to share our stories. I'm your host, Dr. Erin Martin. Welcome. I'm your host, Dr. Erin Martin, and today we have a wonderful woman with us, Miss Genevieve Piturro. Genevieve is the best-selling and 5-time award-winning author, inspirational speaker, and founder of Pajama Program. Genevieve left her job as a successful TV marketing executive, picked up a pair of pajamas, and built a nationally known 501(c) nonprofit organization and named it Pajama Program. 2 decades later, Genevieve educates audiences on how to change their own course. She is all about purpose and the human connection, and you are going to see the depths of this woman and her passion for what she does today. I'm so excited for this conversation. Prior to working with the nonprofit, she was a successful television marketing executive until a sudden inner voice challenged her direction and she dramatically altered the path of her life. She found her true purpose when a simple question from a 6-year-old girl in an emergency shelter changed everything. In 2001, she jumped off the corporate ladder and founded the hugely successful national nonprofit Pajama Program. This year, the program celebrates its 21st anniversary, having delivered more than 7 million magical gifts of new pajamas and new books to children through its 42 chapters across the U.S. That is so phenomenal. Genevieve is now an inspirational speaker and purpose consultant, inspiring individuals, groups, and companies to find their purpose and embrace the human connection for success. She created the Purpose ACER business training program to help leaders create a shared culture by aligning the goals of the company and management with the goals of its employees. Imagine that. Her first book, sharing life and leadership lessons she learned through her Pajama Program journey, is an Amazon bestseller and winner of 5 awards. The book, which is called Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas, How to Transform Your Life, Embrace the Human Connection, and Lead with Meaning, debuted during the COVID shutdown to rave reviews, and the book's message and heart of the matter, life and leadership lessons after every chapter, dovetail perfectly with our nation's growing interest in finding purpose and rekindling our human connection. She has recently released her new book, Purpose, Passion, and Moxie, How to Lead the Way and Leave a Legacy, which we are going to hear about. So there's so much that could be said about this truly inspiring woman, but thank you so much for being here, Genevieve. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here.
So first, just to get started, I would love it if you could share with us your story. What put you on this path of empowering others to find their purpose?
Well, I never thought that most of us had a purpose. I thought that word purpose was never part of the conversation when I was going to school and deciding about the career and my future. So if you had asked me, I would have said, famous people. Leonardo da Vinci had purpose. Oprah had purpose. Deepak Chopra has purpose. But the rest of us just lucky to get a job we like. And so I fell in love with the life Mary Tyler Moore had on her show, her Mary Richards character. And being the firstborn of 4 kids to a very Italian traditional family, father off the boat, they sort of expected me to follow suit and get married and have kids and raise them. And my husband would go to work. But watching Mary Tyler Moore at night, I'd sneak down. That was the life that I thought was exciting and different. And I knew that it wasn't sitting very well with my family, but I really wanted that life. And so I secretly pursued it until I made decisions for college. And then I announced that I wanted to live at college and get a career and find an apartment in New York City. And that didn't go over well, but I had a passion for what I thought was success, for what I thought people would think was a great American dream and just have fun and live a great life. And I did that for 12 years. I climbed the corporate ladder. I was in TV in New York City. I was single. I had a pretty apartment and I thought I was happy. I was a workaholic, like so many of us are. And 12 years in a rare, quiet afternoon in my apartment, I heard a voice in me. I know it was from here because I could almost feel the whisper. It wasn't from here because I dealt with that all day long, like most of us do. And I heard this voice ask me, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? And that just shocked me. First, that I heard that voice. And second, that almost immediately everything came crashing down. And I said, no, I'm alone. I'm sitting here alone, but I'm going to be more alone in 30 years if I keep going with this life. And it was like the bottom fell out. I suddenly felt like, what am I doing? I'm racing. What am I racing for? Making other people rich. I had a nice life. I won't say I didn't, but it actually felt empty within moments, like it all evaporated. And I started to think, what's missing? What's happening to me? And I realized that there was something to the family that my parents just expected and thought that it would be natural for me to pursue. Was in my late 30s. And I thought, well, I really can't go out and find somebody, marry them and have kids just like that. But maybe I can find a way to bring children into my life. And I called the police stations because there had been a recent TV news segment on people who are hurting children in their home. And they took these children away. And I called the police and I said, I saw this on the news. Where do you take kids to keep them safe when they're being harmed in their own home? And they gave me the name and a little bit of information about emergency shelters that every city has them and where they were in New York City. And I got the phone numbers and I called and I asked if I could come in maybe at night and read to the children. And they welcomed me. They said, that would be lovely. I always tell everyone that was pre 9/11 and in New York City. So it was much easier then. And I didn't realize, obviously, how easy it was then. It just seemed to be natural. So I went in and I read, and I was in my business suit. I'd been to work and got out just in time to make it over there. And I read a story of the children's books I brought with me. And it was a very bare room. So I sat on the floor in my suit and they brought the children, 5 to 6, 7 little ones. It was an emergency shelter. And they came in and they just plopped themselves down on the floor in front of me. And I read story after story and I couldn't help but notice they were wearing clothes that didn't fit. They were soiled. Some of them were crying. Most of them were afraid and just stared at me. None of them spoke. And I just read for 45 minutes nonstop, slowly and just gently. And my mind was racing, trying to figure out what could have happened. Why are they here? What are they thinking about? Because clearly they were afraid and they were uncomfortable. And some of them, they were traumatized. And then the staff came and they'd been in the back and they came into the front and took them to go to sleep at night. And this happened week after week, different children all the time. And one night, it was always the same. It was always quiet. They were similar in nature because of the situation. One night I asked if I could see where they were sleeping and I followed. And when I peered in the room, my heart just dropped because it was an equally bare room with futons and couches and the kids hopping up together, some of them huddling. They had nothing to change into. Nobody there that would mean that they knew who they were and they were a continued presence in their life. It was just lights out. And the staff were really nice, but it wasn't the bedtime that I had or that I thought everybody had. And as I was leaving, I turned to one of the staff people and I asked her if I could bring some pajamas next week because I saw they're sleeping in their clothes. I thought to myself, where are their pajamas? And I don't know why that's what stuck out. But because of the bedtime my mom gave us, just seeing that in my mind as I watched this opposite view, that's what I asked. Can I bring some pajamas next time? And the staff thought that was a nice idea. They said, nobody ever thinks of that. I brought pajamas with the books and I read to the children that night and I started handing out the pajamas. And the children took them quietly and the staff brought them to the other room to go to sleep. But one little girl was so afraid of me. She just kept backing up. She just kept shaking her head. No, no, no. But she wanted to watch me, which I always thought was so strange that she didn't run away or run into that other room. She was curious. And there was something that had her stand and watch me. And I saw her watching and I kept those pink pajamas that I wanted to give her on my shoulder. And when she was the only one there with her staff person, I went back and I tried again gently. I tried to explain they're soft. You can keep them. You don't have to give them back. You can even wear them all day tomorrow if you want to. And there's pink in your shirt. I think you'll like these. Don't you want your pajamas? And she just leaned in quietly and she just said, Miss, what are pajamas? She could barely say the word pajamas. And that just blew me away. That just question had, I never expected it. I didn't know how to react and I didn't want to make her think she'd done something wrong. So I kept it together and I had to explain pajamas to this little girl. And I just couldn't stop the obsession. It just bulldozed me over.
The first time I heard you tell that story, it hit me so deeply in my heart. And I've been thinking about it. And hear you say the story again. There's something about pajamas that for those of us who had a bedtime, we grew up in a place where we were relatively safe, at least. That time of night and those pajamas symbolize some sort of security and comfort that we feel like is almost a human right. And to hear that this little girl didn't even know what pajamas were is a wake up call to this realizing that it's so easy for us to live in a bubble and to think that our way of life is the experience that everybody else has. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And so it's no surprise at all that that hit you and that stuck with you. And all, like you said, became almost an obsession that you had to do something about. So from that point on, what did you do?
Well, my whole energy shifted from the crazy workaholic life that I thought was so exhilarating to a deeper feeling of feeling helpless in everything I had done up to this moment and feeling like a human being, like a compassionate person who felt the pain of this child and couldn't wrap my arms around her and take her away. I just couldn't. And that was such a helpless feeling that just made me so sad. But at the same time, it really pushed me to just shop for pajamas, to just bring as many as I could back there as fast as I could. And to say yes, every time a staff person said, we have some friends at this shelter. Can I share your number? Yes. And it just became this warm bubble almost because I really didn't give much thought to anything I had done before or myself or my safety running around or for my financial dependency on my job or my employers and coworkers became an obsession. And I'm honest about that. And I took a lot of things for granted and made a lot of mistakes because I wasn't very rational for a while. I was just emotional.
Right. We get so emotional, we're not even actually really present. But to create what you've created, there has to come a point where it was like, wait a minute, you come back into yourself and your presence. And what was it for you that made you able to harness all of everything that you were, all the resources that you had, the connections that you had, whatever it was that you did that created this organization that has impacted so many people? I mean, 42 chapters in the whole country, like that's almost a chapter in every single state. That is something that is having an impact. What was it that took you from that place of being emotional and irrational and obsessed to purposeful and present and powerful?
I think that's a great question. And I was thinking, I think I got sober because I was riding high, just action, action, action in a totally different way than action at the office. And I was physically running around and I was just giving my credit card to everybody. And I think I sobered up when I realized when reality hit, when I saw my bills, when I saw the looks of my colleagues, when I saw my bosses look at me like, do you even know what you just showed me? It has nothing to do with what I asked for. I mean, literally, there are times when I just was a robot and not a good one. And that was very unlike me. I was such a stellar employee and I was really driven and I wanted that corner office on the top floor. So it was strange. And it started, and I say in my book, Stop Juggling, Leave Juggling for the Clowns. I was juggling. And I think when the ball started to drop, I think I had to make some decisions. And leaving that or doing that on a Saturday only wasn't an option for me. A lot of people would say, and the first woman I told, because I didn't tell anyone for months, what do you tell them? I don't care about my job. I just want to give kids pajamas. It sounded as crazy to me as it does to you and to anybody. And the first girlfriend I told said that. She said, are you crazy? All this that you've worked for, why don't you just do that like on the weekend, Saturday afternoon? And I was horrified, but she took it so lightly, and looking back, I was very hard on her, but I took it personally. These children, they were vulnerable. They were hanging on by a thread, and what was going to happen to them if we didn't hold hands and each take a piece to making their lives better. So I think all of that just sort of made me breathe a little bit and say, okay, clearly I've made the decision that this is going to be my future. How am I going to make this work? Because if I lose it or lose everything, I can't help them. And I met a great guy and I was afraid to tell him. And I did, because I figured you better know I'm not going to be a high earner anymore. And I told him that this is what I want to do. And he said, go for it. So at least then I wasn't alone. And then I told more people. I told my family, and they were concerned. It was mom. She said, you'll figure it out. I believe in you. So I think it was the juggling and the dropping of the balls.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And then it sounds like as you kind of pulled everything into perspective, you started really garnering support, although maybe somewhat skeptical support, but you were able to kind of surround yourself with people who, what it sounds like, they believed in you and what you were doing.
They believed in me because I was a good worker and my track record was good. I could get something done. But I think the real impetus to the success is the little girl's question. The story, when I would tell people that story, they'd have the reaction you had, the reaction I still have. This is not okay. We can do something. This is a little thing. Come on, people. And I think that emotion that people felt, clearly parents, clearly grandparents. I wasn't a grandparent or a parent, but that nurturing part of us, red flag, not okay. This has to be fixed. This is going to hurt my heart and it's hurting her heart. We don't need to have that kind of pain in her. So I think that's really what did it. And as far as the switch of being a crazy, obsessed person and somebody who can figure things out, I teach this all the time. Your head's always looking out for you and is always thinking danger, danger, danger. And so we get used to our head giving us the signals and the direction. And it's fighting the heart that's saying, I want to do this. And the head's saying, are you crazy? It's not going to work. You've done it, blah, blah, blah. And I think once you get to a point where you've made the decision, your heart is going to lead you, your brain gets a signal and it switches and it says something like, okay, she's made that decision. We're smart. We're going to help her now. And it switches. And it really, really does. It's hard to explain.
No, but it really does. If people have experienced something like that, it's like there's this resistance and it is resisting you and resisting you and resisting you. But when the real you makes up its mind and it's like, it's this or nothing, I'm doing this, then all of a sudden the mind goes into solution mode. Like, okay, who do we need to call? What resources do we need to dig up here? Like something clicks over. So I love that you're describing that. It's a switch. Absolutely. But obviously you're talking here about human connection and you speak about that a lot. And that's part of the books that you've written and all of that. What is the deeper meaning of this? Because human connection is like, it could be a really beautiful Hallmark commercial that people kind of just give lip service to. But the importance of human connection and deeper meaning of this and what you see happen when the people that you work with, like when they get it, when that switch goes off.
Well, human connection changes everything because it's energy that's transmitted between one human heart and another human heart. I show pictures. You can see it. I've experienced it. We all have. And I think we saw it en masse during COVID. I mean, how many video clips of kids waving to their teachers driving by did you see? How many times did you see someone going to the door with food to an elderly person who couldn't leave the house? How many times did you say, oh, all day long, right? You don't have to be physically there. It's 10 times better when you are physically there, but just feeling that energy that comes across the TV, that comes across miles, countries of what people are doing for and with each other is just miracle after miracle after miracle. And I think it's just the energy that we pick up because we're energetic beings.
And energy needs to flow because what happens when energy stagnates? But Genevieve, that's an absolutely beautiful explanation of that. Because energy, we talk about human connection, and even in that one word, I'm always into word and things, or that phrase, human connection, we think of one to another, even if it's linking hands. But when we talk about energy, it brings us into this feeling, this idea of oneness. And it is all connected because in energy, there's no beginning and end. And that's the whole thing. Like Michael Jackson said, we are the world, right? Like we are all connected. And I love that explanation that the importance of human connection is in the energy exchange that happens between us. It's so beautiful. Well, you talk about finding your pajamas. What do you mean by that? And how do you help people do this?
Well, I use pajamas as purpose. So when I teach master classes, sometimes I use the 7 steps too, and the word is pajamas. So I go letter by letter because I found my purpose in pajamas, so to speak. It's a fun way to say it. And so it's memorable. So that's what I mean when I write it or when I speak it or teach it. It's like, find your pajamas.
It makes it seem so simple, like find your purpose, like it's a super easy weekend thing. And if somebody is actually intentional about it and is purposeful about it, because a lot of us already kind of know, right? We have an idea. There's something inside of us that's already leaning or directing in one direction. But if people are, they've come to that point, if a person has come to that point where they're questioning themselves, they're seeking their purpose, what are the steps that one can take to find clarity about this? And before you answer that question, I'm thinking about probably a lot of the people that you work with. I know a lot of people that are going to listen to this podcast are women and probably some men as well who have already had a career and they've already followed a certain path and they've made the economically sound decisions to follow something based off of what money they think they're making, or maybe it's pressure from their family or whatever the reason may be. For those people who have come to the point where sitting in your apartment being, what if the next 30 years are going to be like this? Is this going to be okay with your soul? How does someone find clarity about this?
Well, first, let me say, if you want to go to my website, anybody, there's a tab that says practice finding your purpose. There's an exercise there. You can do that. So basically, that exercise asks you to be quiet, alone for 90 minutes with a pen and paper, no computer. You can have wine or tea, but you need to give yourself that time. There are a few things I can say. Yes, there are so many people who have been going on one path. I was, but a lot of people have a lot more responsibilities than other people that they're responsible for. So I understand. I've worked with a lot of people who couldn't do what I did. They could, but then they would have been turning the lives of many people upside down. And they're not comfortable with that. Or other people aren't comfortable with that. So I first talk to them about what their personal life is and who knows about this. Some people, you'd be surprised. Somebody doesn't know that they want to be a dancer. They've been going along as a math teacher. But it depends on their nature too. First, what's at stake? Who's involved? Are you financially prepared, or you can be like me? I wasn't, but I have moxie and I teach that. But there's a jump and there's a slide. And I'm a jumper. I have that gene. I keep doing it, did it again. So I'm a jumper, but not everybody is. But there's a slide that I can help people with. So a lot of times, an hour or two a week to start with in that potential career or in that position or in that world brings so much joy. And people don't realize, they think it's all or nothing, but it's not. If you want to be a dancer and you're a math teacher, then let's talk about how to bring that into your life. And then there'll come a time when you'll decide if that's enough or not. But it's a way to give your soul that food, that feeling that it's being nurtured, and you wouldn't believe how comforting that is. Instead of keep pushing it on the back burner and saying, when the kids go to college, when I'm retired, when I save enough money, when. It's like a gift that you're giving yourself, and it changes things. Even an hour or two a week immersed in that, whether you're researching it, whether you're talking to somebody who lives in that career, has that career, whether you are volunteering in it. But that's an amazing gift, the slide, to start things off. And it's comfortable for a lot of people to start that way, especially later, they're not 22.
I love that. The jump versus the slide. And I think that this is so important because particularly for people who are ambitious and career driven and they had success already, like you said, there's a very black and white thinking. I'm a black and white thinker. And it's like, oh, I really want to do this. But then there's all of these reasons why that's not going to be a good idea. So I guess I can't do it. And the slide is like this kind of juicy getting acquainted with something that is actually, it's like dating. It would be like dating courting this thing, the fun part. And so for so many of us that are just, we're driven, we're in our masculine energy, we're used to pushing and getting things done, we actually could really be missing out. I feel like that jump could be jarring and we're missing out on some of the evolution that happens when we are essentially kind of switching our identity to something that is much more purposeful. And so I love this idea of the slide. Do little by little over periods of time, be doing more and more of what you want to be doing and less of what you are leaving behind, essentially.
Right? It's just freedom. And you can decide every step of the way how comfortable you are. And so can everybody else that's going to be impacted.
Right. That's such a good concept. I just love that. So intuition is something that's often talked about, of course. However, in my experience of working with tens of thousands of people over the course of my career in medicine, many people aren't really able to tune into that intuition. And even fewer numbers of people are actually following what messages or signals or feelings that they're getting. But I love how you talk about the heart voice. And maybe that's not exactly the same thing as intuition. It sounds very similar, but I would love it if you would explain that. And I think that this might really help people to approach this concept with a much more like, oh, I can do that. That's available to me. Because I think the idea of intuition for a lot of people is, well, that's a gift that some people have and others don't. But we all have a heart. We all have this ability to listen into something that is inherent in all of us. So I'd love it if you would explain that and talk about that.
Sure. I think the reason that we don't automatically know and listen to our intuitions because we're so busy, we are never quiet. And both intuition and a heart voice come when you're quiet. Sometimes it can blare a message to you if it's hitting you over the head because you've been ignoring it. Meditation is a perfect example. If you take the time every morning, 15 or 20 minutes to sit quietly, I sit outside, even when it's freezing, I'm bundled up in my bathrobe and a hoodie and towels around me because being outside in the dark before the sun comes up, the occasional sound it's quiet. And if you just sit quietly and you listen to your body, you'll feel things. You'll feel, I like this, I don't like this. Oh, I have to go and see this person. You'll say, oh, I didn't realize I had that kind of a reaction to this or that. It's almost like talking to yourself as if it were another person to get yourself to answer and to feel things without other things bombarding your senses, without all the stimuli that we're constantly more comfortable in, which is sad, but I think it's true. I think we want to be distracted. We don't want to feel, we don't want to say, oh, I don't like that person. We ignore it. Let's just get busy doing it instead of saying, I really don't want to do that. And I'm going to have the courage to trust how I feel. But your body is a great barometer. If you say a person's name, you will have a reaction. And if we say that name or that thing and wait and tune in, our body will tell us, don't go there. Or, oh, I can't wait to go there.
Yes. So how do you teach people to tune into their heart voice?
They have to be quiet. Really, we have to take time. Even I can do it with people or in my exercise. If you can't take 15 or 20 minutes, take 5. Take a couple of minutes several times during the day. Just sit and say, how do I feel? You know when you're getting ruffled. You know when you're getting tense. Ask yourself, what is it? What is it about? What's going on? And if your body is getting the signal that you're listening, the heart will continue to talk to you. It's just something that you have to foster. It's something you have to nurture. You have to tell yourself, okay, heart. Okay, body. I think this is great. I'm sorry I've ignored this because I really need this because I'm getting too stressed or I'm finding myself, the years are passing and I'm doing things still that I didn't want to do 5 years ago. And I'm not feeling well and I don't want to feel sick or bad. So I'm going to listen. And you have to trust it. You have to try it. You have to feel it. And you have to see what works. But it comes when you're quiet and still.
I want to switch a little bit here to talking about, I call it like enlightened leadership. And you work a lot with organizations. And I'm wondering, like, if we talk about enlightened leadership, what does that mean and why is it important? And what are the outcomes that transform organizations with the work that you do?
I like that phrase that you just coined. I would say it's more of a sharing of ideas and thoughts and strategies rather than the old boss type of everybody comes in the conference room and the boss gives the orders and everybody answers whenever the boss speaks to them. It's not really a, what do you think? It's really a, did you do this yet? And everybody reports back and then everybody leaves the meeting. But enlightened means we're only going to move together if we understand and we're on the same page and we feel comfortable sharing information and sharing purpose and making sure that there's some way we're all on the same page. You don't have to have your purpose exactly with mine, but there has to be something that aligns or this isn't a good match here at the company, at the family, at the relationship, whatever. Something has to align. And that takes work. It takes letting go of some of the power that people have had in the past, which is uncomfortable for some people. And I think it's just a willingness to listen more, a willingness to ask for opinions, a willingness to bring everybody to the table, whether it's a new type of a round table assembly than it used to be, especially where we are in the world now. We have to go that way because we're going to just fall away if we're not willing to look forward to getting closer to people rather than isolating ourselves and other people. So I think the enlightened leader understands that there has to be more togetherness, more sharing, more openness, more vulnerability. And I think for a lot of people, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I bet that's a new paradigm. But once you've worked with an organization and they implement these things and the culture starts to shift, what transformations have you seen happen?
I think a lot of people are floored that the leader's not the only one with good ideas, that it's not all on the top person, because that's how we all were brainwashed into thinking, right?
Right. And I imagine that those people that are on the top that feel that pressure, I'm thinking someone like you comes in and essentially is enrolling everybody else in being part of the organization in a different way. I would feel totally relieved.
Some are hanging on to the way it used to be, but a lot of those people decided it was time to retire, and it was for them.
So these organizations are, like you said, we move together, we have shared purpose. So there's a real paradigm shift in the structure and I guess like the daily runnings. And that might lead to ultimately more happiness for everyone, but also more profitability, more greater retention of employees, which is a huge cost to organizations. So I'm imagining that this is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, that's the direction that everybody wants to go, who's going in that way. And I think we're still fleshing it out. We're still looking for, every company is trying to figure it out, looking at what they're doing next door, looking at who is doing it well, who wants to try it first, because it's different. Who's leading? Are we going to let the newbies lead? What's going to happen to the old bosses? How are they going to deal with it? Is there going to be friction? But I think that's growth. Those are growing pains. And I think we just have to accept, as much as we want it to be kumbaya, it's not going to be kumbaya, but hopefully that's where we're headed, closer to that.
Right. Well, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, being someone who obviously is so outwardly giving and at this point tuned in to your purpose and what it takes to make all of that happen. What on a personal level for you, what nourishes you? What keeps you going? What keeps you grounded and on purpose?
Another good question. Well, when you're on purpose, and you know this, it's your North Star. So every decision that you make has to align. You want it to align because you haven't gone to these lengths to live your purpose if you're just going to get off course so easily. So to enrich your life, to feel like you're contributing to your family, your community, but to the greater good, then you make sure everything you're doing aligns with your North Star. So depending on what your purpose is and what else is in your life, you'll know if something is the right fit or not. So when I see people shift that and make a decision based on how they've rebuilt or are rebuilding their life to their fulfillment, to their family's happiness, and to contribute. And I talk a lot about legacy because it's not something that you have to worry about when you're 75. It's something that you should be living as soon as you find that your purpose is what's driving you. You should be a contribution naturally, whether it's singing, whether it's teaching, whether it's taking care of pets, whether you're an accountant, you are contributing to someone and to the greater good. So when I see a shift in somebody who spent so much time stressed for one reason on a path, to find that there is a choice. And if you're not alone, then it can be a lot easier than in your brain thinking, oh, I'm going to really mess this up and I'm going to be lost and poor. If you find that support, the shift is like a new person comes out of that.
What do you personally use to keep yourself moving forward? Like daily practices, or, I mean, you talked about meditation and that heart voice. So I'm assuming that's a part of your daily thing that you do. But for someone that is so tapped into purpose, and you talked about human connection and energy and all of this stuff, I'm just wondering, what are the underpinnings for you personally that keep you on purpose, lined up with that? Because we're talking about alignment. We can always get off course, but you have that North Star. What keeps you on that path?
I want to always feel good. I always want to feel there's hope and that I'm on a good path. So I know who is good and who I want in my life, and I know who I don't want so much of in my life. And I know I don't want the news in my life every hour. And I don't want people who are complaining in my life all the time, because I don't know why we get into that conversation. And if I do, I am so upset. I can feel in my body. Talk about your body will react. I get upset and it throws everything off. And it's just, I've learned at my age that I don't want to feel that stuff. So I try to watch and associate with and go where it makes me feel good and the people are nurturing and also the same mindset. So it's not always possible because we have people in our lives that we don't want to lose. But if you're conscious of it, you can choose how you want to spend your weekend, and you can choose to be honest with yourself and say, I think I'll skip that event, or I think I'll choose a different group, or I won't go at all. It's hard because we're so programmed to do the right thing where other people expect us to do.
Right. We're so programmed to meet expectations. And it sounds like what you're describing is being very, very conscious and purposeful with the environment that you're creating for yourself. And that's what keeps you on the direction. And you're talking about energy again, the energy from other people that you want to be in the presence of or you don't want to be in the presence of. If you want to get that fear energy from the news, or you're regulating that influx, like it is being so purposeful with the environment that you create for you to stay on purpose, for you to thrive, and for you to feel good. I love that. Ultimately, it's all about feeling good. That sounds very superficial, but we're all after what makes us feel this goodness, is what I want to say. Not a superficial level of good, but where's that goodness at? Where's the juice of life that we're after?
Right. And it's selfish, but in a good way, because you're taking in that energy and you're giving it out again. So if you spend the day or an hour with a group that's on a rampage, and then you leave and you go and see your mom, it lingers.
Yeah, that's a setup for disaster right there.
Yeah. Or kids, if you then go and see kids, or even your pet. It's energy, and they're going to pick up on it, and then it's going to continue in you. And it's energy. And we have to understand that.
Right. Your new book, Purpose, Passion, and Moxie, How to Lead the Way and Leave a Legacy, has just been released. And I would love it if you would tell us about it, because it has a really amazing purpose. So go ahead and tell us about it.
Sure. Well, people have always asked me to support and help them start a nonprofit since Pajama Program began to grow. And I've always done that, and I've always loved it. And the reason I love to share it is because I knew nothing. I told you the story. What happened, why it became an actual nonprofit, is because somebody wrote a little article in a magazine, and it talked about this lady giving pajamas out to shelters. And I was inundated with thousands and thousands and thousands of boxes and notes and money. And I was newly married, and we were eating on these boxes. We couldn't even see each other over these boxes. And when we started opening them, you could see that people were elderly. You could tell by the handwriting, and $5. And can you give this to a child? And pajamas and a storybook. I loved this when I was a kid. Maybe another child will love this book. And one letter came from a company and they said, if you give us your 501c3, we'd like to give you a grant. And I looked at my new husband and I said, what is this thing? 501 in parentheses 3. I had no idea. But when I found out, I said to myself and I said to him, this is a responsibility. These people trust me and I want to do this and I have to do it right. And there's a legality and there are financial things I have to think about now. And so that's what it was, that people trusted me and I wanted to return that. And I was thrilled that other people got it. And I wasn't the shy girl afraid to say what I wanted to do anymore at age 38, 39. So it was a beautiful moment, which was also fraught with a lot of fear and insecurities of what do I do? And helping people and supporting people, they were honest to say, I don't know what to do and I'm afraid and this is my issue and this is what my husband or my wife's going to say and I have kids in school. What am I going to do? So in talking it through all these years and then teaching a masterclass during COVID on starting a nonprofit, it just came into a book very easily because I wanted to say, here, you can have for $12.99 and then let's talk. Read the book. It'll at least give you some background. And I like to call it Moxie because I didn't have the money. I didn't have the know-how. I didn't have the people who knew how to teach me until I got up the nerve, which is something else we have to understand about ourselves. We don't like to ask for help. And I had to, and we have to. Our whole lives, we have to.
Well, I missed your masterclass back in COVID because I started a nonprofit back in COVID by myself, much like you, thinking for me, I was reading all of these news stories about these women who were mothers and working mothers, but who were putting themselves through college, and how because of COVID and all of the job losses and everything, they were having to make this choice between dropping out of school and continuing with their education. So I started this nonprofit called Possibilities for Women to raise scholarship funds for women who were affected by COVID. And I just had this idea and I'm so passionate about it. I'm so passionate about education, particularly for women. And I had to muddle all the way through it. So if I had known you had a masterclass, if you had written that book back then, I would have eaten it up. But one of the things that I love, the first time I heard about your book, Purpose, Passion, and Moxie, I was like, oh, that's a great title. But then when I read the subtitle and then when I read what it was actually about, I think that the humanitarian, like the humanity of the purpose for which you are doing this. And I say women, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of your audience and your followers are women, and they have these ideas. Their purpose comes to them to help other people in some way or to help animals or to do something. And there are so many roadblocks, not just the like, well, I have a job and I have kids and all of that. But when you get through all of that, then you're like, now what? Now it takes forever to establish your 501(c)(3) status. And there's all of these hurdles that you have to walk through. So to have somebody write something that can streamline that learning curve, I think is brilliant, Genevieve. So thank you so much for writing that. And for anybody that's out there that is a leader, we're talking about enlightened leadership, wants to leave a legacy and has a purpose in mind to do that, I would really, really suggest that you pick up Genevieve's new book, Purpose, Passion, and Moxie.
Well, thank you for that. Well, at least it's one more support piece for everyone. And I'm always here. So I love to talk about it. And I'll do more, another webinar, and I'm always do them for groups and things like that. But yeah, I think more and more we've come out of COVID with a couple of good things. And that's one of them. I think people stop saying when, later. And they're like, we don't know. So let's just do it.
That's right. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, Genevieve. I am just in admiration of you. And I would love it. Can you tell us where we can find you? Can you tell us what are your channels? All of that.
Sure. My name, GenevievePiturro.com. And that's where you can find everything about my work now. And Pajama Program is pajamaprogram.org if you want to find out what is going on there.
Right. Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much, Genevieve. This has been an absolute pleasure. I wish you all of the best in your future endeavors and what you've got going on right now.
Thank you so much. I loved our conversation.
The Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom is brought to you by Dr. Erin Martin and the Lavish Group. To find out more about Dr. Erin and how you can create and embody a lavish life for yourself, visit thelavishgroup.com. And don't forget to search for Lavish Leader in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at the Lavish Group, thanks for listening. And remember, you too can live a lavish life of fulfillment, beauty, and love.